Hello everyone, I am Aurora Sidio, the VTuber that is still trying to get a shiny Latios. Are you shiny yet? Are you shiny yet? In the world of Pokémon, there are many things you may consider when analyzing the trainers' teams in any of the games, mangas, or even the anime. Do they specialize in a particular type? Do they implement a more offensive strategy? Or do they rely more on a defensive stance? And why the fuck do you have a full team of Magikarps? But there's one concept that fascinates me, and that is the concept of an ace Pokémon, and what that entails for the Pokémon trainer that uses it. Before we begin exploring the concepts and whatnot, let me introduce you properly what is an ace Pokémon, because to me, it always sounded obvious and straight to the point, but when I mentioned it to a streamer that doesn't follow too much about Pokémon, they were like, your ace Pokémon Lucario? Like, Lucario colored with a trans flag colors? Which, you know, fair enough. So let us be on the same page here. For ace Pokémon, I mean the main Pokémon of a team. It's also usually the strongest Pokémon in a team, but that's not really required. The trainer's team could be studied to weaken the opponent's strongest Pokémon, to then allow the ace Pokémon to sweep the remaining Pokémon, for example. A similar concept to this are the boss monsters in the various trading card games, like in Battle Spirit Saga or Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I'll use the latter as an example. The main card that an entire deck is studied to bring out as soon as possible, since it's the main win condition of said deck. As a quick example, the Mathmech archetype, cards that modify the attack values of the cards on the field to do big damage, whose main boss monster is the card Geo Mathmech Sigma, since it can get boosted by the cards of its own archetype, and swing for double battle damage to close a game in one attack. So, now that we are on the same page of what an ace Pokémon is, I want to bring the attention on how this concept has been used in the franchise of Pokémon, precisely by the various trainers' characters that we can meet and beat. I think the best way to start talking about the trainers' ace Pokémon is to study what probably is the first thing I imagine you thought of, the gym leaders. Gym leaders throughout the various Pokémon games and media have a team custom tailored around a specific type, and every single one of them has an ace Pokémon that represents them and their gym philosophy. For example, Roxanne, the Hoenn Rock gym leader, has the ace Nosepass. This is not a very remarkable ace Pokémon. After all, in its debut generation, it can't even be evolved, and its stats are not that impressive later on either. But that's also the point. Nosepass is a genuine threat only in the early game, and Roxanne is an early game gym leader. She probably receives trainers that are redirected by Norman because they're not up his level yet. And since she is a teacher first and foremost, a Pokémon that can't evolve as such is a proper challenge for newbies trainers starting off to teach them how to deal with tougher opponents. And it can also aid her in her classes, since it always points towards the north. Okay, I basically had to fanfiction that whole purpose of the ace thingy, since Roxanne's material is sparse and very little between interpretations. But I personally think I got close to a coherent explanation on why she has Super Mario as an ace. But that feels more like a Pokémon that became the ace out of necessity for the trainer needs. It still tells us about her, but this feels less like a personal choice and more of a "this Pokémon literally checks all the boxes of what I need." What about a more personal ace Pokémon? The type that is not ideal for what the trainer needs, but it's what they chose. And for this, I will talk about two examples. Guzma from the Alolan games, and Joy from Johto. I am not fucking with you. Kuzma is a trainer that has the tendency of putting on a tough guy act, but as soon as he gets defeated, he puts up an excuse and immediately runs away. And as such, his ace Golisopod perfectly represents him. A tough Pokémon that can dispatch a lot of damage in little time. But its ability makes it retreat as soon as it arrives at half of the health.
Use liquid! See?
He generally specializes in the bug Pokémon type, but Golisopod is still the shining star that represents him the most. The other example is Joy, the Rattata Master. Joy is the first Pokémon trainer we beat in Johto, and he uses a single Rattata. But that's not the end of him, because if you get his phone number, letting him update you on his Rattata adventures, you have then the opportunity to rematch him. And after the Pokémon League, he trains his Pokémon, making it evolve, and he never catches another one. Not only that, but in Crystal, if you rematch him with a Rattata at the 4th time, he has the chance to give you a protein. So he also DVs in Gen 2, he also DV maxed his Raticate. He decided to specialize in the only Pokémon he has ever caught during your adventure in the game, and he dedicated himself to becoming the best trainer for it. The reason I used both of them for my examples here is that I feel like they're the same type of trainers, the same type of characters. I feel like they are the same type of trainers that dedicate themselves to their ace Pokémon, and as a matter of fact, I fully expect Kuzma to have started with only a Wimpod in his team before evolving it into his ace, then looking for options to fortify his team behind a theme to back up Golisopod. And if we were ever to see a direct sequel to the Johto games, I would love to see Joy again, either as a gym leader or Super 4, or an otherwise strong trainer, with his ace Raticate ready to go. So basically, we typically have an ace through the need, and an ace because of the trainer bias. Both types define the trainers and their core personality, where in other games said characterization was lacking altogether, and dependent on outside media like the manga and the anime. Although not every single trainer has a set ace most of the times. Some trainers have different teams altogether with various strategies, but what about the players? How does the concept of ace Pokémon apply for us? If you like the show, please like, comment and subscribe. A little bit of support goes a long way. I will come out to say immediately that I will not talk extensively about the competitive aspect of Pokémon. You would think this concept would apply to competitive perfectly, but in my opinion it's more of a novelty than an active part of it. Sure, there are examples of ace Pokémon in competitive teams that are the center of the strategy overall and uses the central gimmick of the generation like Mega Evolution, Z-Moves and Gigantamax. But competitive Pokémon is much more complex in its interactions and team building to reduce it to one Pokémon star of a show. After all, the competitive sphere includes specific Pokémon for strategies, counter picks for meta Pokémon, and even strategies with no ace Pokémon at all, where every single member is part of a well-oiled machine with no central Pokémon around it. Usually an ace Pokémon for a player is something incredibly simple, like the player's favorite Pokémon that they love and care for. I am not an exception for this. What, do you think the thumbnail made by the lovely Wonder Toys features Lucario by mistake? No. Lucario has always been my favorite Pokémon since its introduction, and every single game where it's featured, I slot it in immediately and build it for the game. But what about in the games where Lucario is not featured? In the case, I go along the vibe of the game and see how it goes. I recently started to play Pokémon games on stream from Gen 1 to replay the whole franchise. Not every single game, reasonably the games of the generations. At the moment of this video, I'm currently streaming Pokémon Sapphire, and I set myself to build teams as I go using as many different Pokémon as I can, trying to force myself into using Pokémon I usually wouldn't. And in Gen 1, I had an ace Pokémon that led me to dominate most of the battle, including the Pokémon League. Tentacruel. Because in Gen 1 the special stat was not divided in special defense and special attack, this is the only game where the squid can hit hard. And since Tentacruel can learn Ice Beam, Surf, Mega Absorb and whatnot, it does a lot of damage. Unfortunately, in that gen, the Psychic type was OP for the same special reason, so in order to cover it from that weakness, I also had in my team a Mr. Mime, to hard counter that type, with barriers to tank the damage and body slam to do damage and potentially paralyze them. So, for any team a player decides to use, there could be a different ace Pokémon. Or they could even dedicate a run to a particular Pokémon or Pokémon type, to see how certain Pokémon would fare in a playthrough, like for example the series of videos by ManDigiTV dedicated on Team Sky, where he uses exclusively Pokémon that could be used in Sky battles in the 6th gen like flying Pokémons or various creatures with the ability Levitate, essentially creatures of the sky. So not only every single player can have their favorite Pokémon as their ace, but they can also change up the teams in base of what they need and try new things out. So, now that I elaborated the concept for both trainers and players, what can we conclude on the concept of ace Pokémon? The ace Pokémon is far more complicated than just one's favorite Pokémon. They can be a narrative tool to explain core aspects of the characters in the games. They can be your favorite Pokémon, but they can also be an unexpected new surprise as you try things out. Every player will find a different ace Pokémon, whatever their experience may be. They may even change as you grow as a player in the games themselves. The only limit on what your ace could be is yourself. Thank you for watching the show. Remember to go and follow Wonder Toys, the amazing artist that agreed to do the thumbnail for this video to then showcase on their portfolio. Please support this incredible artist. With that said, I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you.